Welcome back to the Daily Dollar Podcast. I'm your host, Cait McCready, and I am here with...
Art Morrison III, ladies and gents.
What's so funny?
Nothing.
This is episode 17.
Your intros are never boring.
Oh, well, okay. You told me not to make them boring.
Yeah, the way to spruce them up.
Thanks. So we are talking today about knowing your end buyer. Was that boring for you?
I mean, yeah, all right. So what about it?
I mention it and he yawns.
Okay. Explain that, knowing your end buyer.
So knowing your end buyer is, it's more so, well, it could pertain to anything, but when we're flipping a house.
So this is specific flipping, or do you want to change that to like know your end customer? Because what about rentals?
Yeah,
what about?
That's kind of what I was going to get into. Normally, I think of when I think of knowing your end buyer, I think of when we flip homes, and knowing who we're selling to based on the area, price point, size of the home, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could pertain to who your renter would be, what type of renter that you would be trying to get into one of your apartments, or as a realtor, who you're selling to and how to market to them. So,
or what you're selling and how to market it into who.
Yeah.
So we could dive into all of that.
Yeah.
What's a good example of a time that we knew our end buyer?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Klein. I like Klein. I mean, so there was a property on Klein Place. It's a street, so we call it Klein. We call all our properties by street name. And it actually was an old, it was owned by the Association of Retarded Citizens, which isn't politically correct, I guess. So.
No, that's literally their name.
Yeah, but I know you're not supposed to use the word retarded, right?
Yeah, but when it's used in the proper term, retarded is an actual word.
I know it is. I thought
it's been
under
used
no
poorly.
means do you
No.
use it.
Well, I don't know. I could be wrong. Let us know if we're wrong,
Whatever.
please.
It's owned by the ARC of Somerset, Association of Retarded Citizens. So it was like essentially a home for special people. So it had literally ramps. The house was just kind of like a symmetrical, like a house that like a child would draw. It
was literally.
Yeah, and it was just empty, almost like a barn. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So when we purchased the house, we got it for cheap. We had a great plan for it, but what we had to do is do research on the area to understand, okay, who's actually going to be buying this house? What's the ARV of the house? Who's purchasing at this price point? What kind of person is going to be in this area? Who's going to want a house of this size?
And who's accepting a house that's in a flood zone because it was in a flood zone.
And it was in a flood zone,
yeah.
Right? So what kind of buyer would want you? So we really had to assess the situation from two perspectives, right? And that's what this episode's about. We had to assess it from a numbers perspective, which is what we always do first. Understanding our numbers and evaluating the deal. That's obvious. That's probably why you listen to this podcast. But there's the intangible part that not a lot of people are talking about in real estate, and that's this part of knowing your end buyer, knowing your renter, that helps you to better establish your exit strategy. So if I know, okay, I'll use another property, Middlesex. Middlesex is a property that's kind of in an...
industrial type area.
Not industrial, that's not the right term. We always say that, but it's really just commercial. It's a commercial area, but it's a house, an actual home.
Yeah.
And because it's in a commercial area, and because it's small, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, but it's tight, we know that it screams starter home. Because people who have kids, have a family, wouldn't necessarily want to live on the street. And also probably would have a larger budget than, this house is worth.
Right.
If it is an entire family who would be willing to live there, then yes, their budget, it's probably because that's all their budget would allow.
Right.
So by understanding all of this though and having this thought process really helped us determine what kind of repairs, layout, color schemes, everything that we wanted to put into the property, whether we decided to rent it or buy it.
Right.
Middlesex, the reason why I use this example is because since it's in a commercial area, commercial also means anything with 5 residential units or more. So 1 to 4 is residential, 5 or more is considered commercial. So even though this is a single family, it's among a lot of buildings that would be considered apartment buildings. So what we also considered was, would this be a good rental property? Although it's a single family home, could we collect more rent than the mortgage and actually cash flow on this property? And the answer to that is yes as well. So now we know we have these 2 options as exit strategies on this property. And the way we were able to determine those 2 options was probably 40% numbers,
yes,
60% assessing the situation and understanding our end buyer.
Right.
Every deal is not like that. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's like in an area that's so generic where like anyone's an end buyer, so you really, really, really got to lock in on the numbers. But that's, I won't say it's rare, but every property is not going to be a walk in the park like that.
Right.
So for properties like, it's honestly a couple that we've had like that. Like even Spear was on a corner where it's like, is it going to be somebody with a toddler?
Likely no.
Likely no, you know what I mean? So like, are we going to design this house to be very kid friendly? And when you show the house, are you going to be saying, yeah, this is where the kids play, or this is like
Right.
the kids' room? Like not really, because we know that people with kids, like kids at the age that they can run and play and stuff, wouldn't be on a corner of kind of a major road.
Yeah.
Right. So you got Spear, Klein was a great example. Middlesex.
I think Middlesex is a great example.
Yeah.
From a numbers perspective, but also from like an actual flip and design perspective.
Yeah.
Because we've had a lot of conversation on this. Like Art said, it's a very it's a smaller house, but it is on a very nice sized lot. It's got a big backyard, so that's a huge selling point for it, especially because of the road that it's on and the size that it is.
Not to mention the median household value or house value is like $600,000 in Jersey.
Right.
This house right here is about $325,000. So we know we're going to be on the lower end of kind of entry level of a home buyer.
Right.
So, you don't want to like stereotype or obviously whatever, but just numbers wise, you know that's going to be likely a first time home buyer, new homeowner. So that means likely young. Again, you don't want to stereotype. It could be anybody, but so numbers wise, it's more likely to be a younger person. So now you're designing that house with a younger person in mind. More modern fixtures, modern colors and designs throughout the house.
That's where I was getting at.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you didn't think that way and you just went with, like we have another house that was kind of slightly around the corner, but it was in a quiet neighborhood. It's an old colonial. It's rather large, has a wraparound porch. On that property, we went with kind of an older feel because we knew that a more established person may or may not be moving in.
Right.
Someone who appreciates a wraparound porch, someone who appreciates a quiet neighborhood. So we went with warm colors and like a really just more mature feel. Hardwood floors
dark
throughout.
hardwood floors.
Exactly. Whereas the
something that would be
property,
very, very homey.
yeah,
right?
very homey, warm and homey. So like on this other property on a commercial road at an entry level value
Price point.
and price point, it's like, okay, we can go with like light gray floors throughout the property because we know that,
Right.
Older people might not like fake light gray hardwood floors, but younger
Yeah.
people understand the aesthetic and they understand the modern feel of that. That's like in right now.
Yeah,
Right?
and the lightness of it all makes the house feel bigger, a little more aired out.
Yeah.
Instead of when you go for that homey feel, you're trying to make people feel comfortable and like, I don't know, in their home.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much. Do you have anything else in regards to like knowing your end buyer?
No.
Do we have any rental examples?
I mean, rental examples.
I mean, you
They're
can
a
use.
little
We
bit
have
different.
kinda. We have properties in an area where we know the quality of living is naturally lower, so we aren't forced to invest a certain amount of capital in our renovations when we rent out there. Whereas when we're renting in a more affluent neighborhood, we know like, yo, you can't put these cheap countertops in,
Yes.
or these cheap floors, or you can't go with the cheap carpet because the quality of living that people are used to out here, our apartment is going to look like the Poopa apartment of the
Right.
neighborhood if we try to push this product. So it definitely goes from a rental perspective too, but it's all the same thing. It's not like really tangible
Yeah.
or objective, but like it kind of is. So
Yeah.
we do use like data and research, but you really just got to put your shoes, or you put yourself in the shoes of someone else who's going to be buying the property or renting it out.
Yeah, and you have to think more so from a monthly payment perspective instead of like an
Yeah.
overall purchase.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
who's going to be able to afford $2,000 a month? Okay, everybody in this area can afford $2,000 a month, so that means we can afford to invest X amount of dollars in renovating this unit, right? As opposed to, okay, people in this area are only paying $1,200 a month, so we're not putting quartz countertops in, you know what I'm saying, in this property, or all stainless steel brand new appliances, because people can't even afford. We can't charge rent enough to pay us back for the renovation. So it's got to make sense. It's got to provide a return on investment. So it's important to understand who that customer or renter or buyer is.
Yeah, and it goes back to our last episode in the sense that you have to look at it like a product, an end product. So for every company that sells like a lemonade, you're trying to think like, who am I targeting? Who's my target audience? Every single business does that.
Yeah.
Real estate needs to do that as well.
I love the lemonade example because you can use it for anything. So yeah, it's like, okay, if I'm selling lemonade, but I'm selling it to a clean, natural, organic crowd, then probably use less sugar, probably use all natural sugar, probably use real lemon.
Right.
If I'm selling to kids, probably more sugar, probably can get away with artificial lemon mix.
Right. You can fool them a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, or that's what kids like. They really just want liquid candy. They're not really, so if you sell lemonade in the winter, in the summertime, then it's got to be cold and it's got to be fresh, right? You selling it in the wintertime, you might be able to get away with like refrigerated lemonade that was sitting. So anyway.
So that's knowing your end buyer.
That's how to sell lemonade.
Yes.
But yeah, knowing your end buyer, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're gonna sign off another episode, but before we do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Where at?
YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, everywhere you get your podcasts. Make sure you go check us out at unitedhomerelief.com. That houses our real estate roadmap, where you get all of this information and more with hard resources in the field videos, continuously added to the course as we
so
grow.
If you're listening to this because you like our voices or you think we're a cute couple, then go to the next episode. But if you're listening to this because you actually want to learn real estate, we have a very robust course at unitedhomerelief.com. Go and check it out. Signing off, that's episode 17 of The Daily Dollar. I'm Art Morrison III.
I'm Cait McCready.
And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
See ya.
Peace.